Hi folks, I just wanted to do another formula building tutorial, just to throw in one from phase one. Again, always relevant for anyone to have a look at it, just to keep familiarizing yourself with the way the formulas are built. Remember, and I'll reiterate this in the communication to you I do reiterate in the communication to you all the time. The formula are the default formula as the default setting, as far as the department is concerned, the way they set it up in SASAMS. It may, people add activities, remove activities, and so forth, and the formula of course change. We obviously can't develop, draw a formula for every single permutation out there, and the onus is on schools to be able to understand how these formulas are derived. And again, as I keep saying, it gives you a good understanding of how SAMS derives the formulas. So this is just another, sort of throwing this one in there because it's a little bit different to some of the others that we've done. And it looks complicated because it's long, but really that's all it is, it's just long. Okay, so if you were to look at the sheet in SAMS, you would see that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 task areas. All of them are carrier weighting, none of them are weighted naught, which you sometimes see sort of in the case of provincial tests, for example. So we're going to have 5 areas that we're going to calculate. Remember again, just to reiterate, the Excel mark sheets that get produced for teachers, in order to simplify it for them, they only see where marks need to be captured. Okay, so even if there was a task that didn't have an activity in it, in other words, a mark needs to be captured in the task itself, they would see that column. In this case, all the tasks have got activities within them, and so you would only see these yellow columns on the Excel sheet. Obviously they won't be yellow on the Excel sheet, but these are the columns that you will see on the Excel sheet. And so I've replicated that in a little sort of workshop type tool that I use. So this is what the columns would look like. Sorry, let's just take that out. And I have replicated the headings and the marks. Again, you can see what I'm talking about. So 10, 10, 15, the tests out of 10, 10, 15, you can see here 10, 10, 15. And this, the marks here, dummy marks here, 7, 8, and 12, 7, 8, and 12. Okay, and then so on. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Another 5, there's a fourth 5 there, and then 2 more 5, 5s, 2 more 5, 5s, and the finals out of 10. You can see the weightings at the top. On your actual Excel spreadsheets, you can see the activity and task numbers above. And you'll know that, not that you have to know, but it's interesting to note that, and I've explained this in previous tutorials, that you can tell that activities are within a task in 2 ways. One, that the weightings at the top add up to 100, and that the task and numbers at the top, they will each carry a different activity number. The task numbers at the top are the same. In other words, denoting that they're all part of a task. And then, so what we do, as you know already, we calculate each section. There's one section, 33, 33, 33. Alright, there's another one. There's one that's on its own, it's out of 100. There's 2, 50, 50, and there's one that's on its own out of 100. And that makes up the 5 components that we looked at here, the 5 task marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I like to do is set that up immediately. Alright, so I've got 5 areas, so we're going to put in 5 sets of open and closed brackets that we're going to calculate. And then within the first area, as you see, we've got 3 tests that need to be calculated. Okay, so we're going to, and yeah, again, it's not as simple enough to just add them together, because as you see, they A, are out of different amounts, and B, they get then put into a mark out of a different total. In other words, if you add these totals together, it's 10, 10, and 15, which is 35. It's not out of 35, they want a mark out of 20. So this mark out of 35 essentially gets converted to a mark out of 20. But not only that, this so-called, imagine, say, mark out of 35 is weighted to be even. Okay, and you can see in the case of one of the tests it's out of 15. But if they're evenly weighted, it means that this 12 out of 15 essentially, if you like, becomes a mark out of 10. It's one way of looking at it. So what I'm saying is that the test totals don't represent the mark contribution. In some cases, in some subjects, in some tasks they do, in some they don't. Even within a subject for a particular grade, you might have some tasks that do and some tasks that don't. If it follows its contribution weighting, okay, in other words, they're each evenly weighted, so let's say it was 10, 10, 10, and it was obviously weighted 33, 33, 33, and the total was 30, then it becomes a bit simpler. Then you can, if the total was 30 and the weighting of the task was 30, then you'd be able to add them together. But even if these were contribution weightings and this total was 30 and the task was weighted as 40, well, you could add them together, but then you'd have to divide them by 30 and multiply by 40 to get it to that task. So essentially, at every single juncture, they can weight. They can have different marks. They don't have to follow contribution weightings, and they can weight on top of that. So I find doing this way is kind of almost a long method, but if I use the same strategy for working out all my marks, you can arrive at the correct mark that SAMS calculates. So I'm going to put 3 areas within that area over there, and then quite simply say the mark divided by the test total multiplied by its weighting, and the same thing for the second part, divided by its test total multiplied by its weighting. Okay, and the same for the third component, mark divided by the test total multiplied by its weighting. And then I'm going to put my constants in so that we can copy and paste down. Okay, we want to hold the test totals and the weightings constant, so that when I copy and paste down, the next row refers to the same cell above. Right, but now the other thing to note is that when you multiply out marks to get them into their weighting, it's not that simple to explain, but it's easy enough just to follow a rule, in the sense that when you multiply the mark out to get its weighting, you don't have to round it. It's sitting now as a mark out of 33.33, in other words. So it could, let's say, it could be hypothetically, say, 29.37 or something like that. You don't have to round, or you shouldn't round those anyway. They need to get added together, and then they need to be put into a mark out of 15, and at that point they get rounded. So you would never see a mark appear in this task column in SAMS as a decimal, even if once multiplying it all out you get a mark of 12.73 out of 15. It rounds up to it will round up to 13. It rounds off. Okay, so at this point now we need to close this all 3 components in brackets so that they operate in their own capacity. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to round them. Okay, sorry, they operate as their own capacity, so that they're now combined as their mark. Okay, now I'm going to round. Okay, and then at the end, where I've encapsulated them both, okay, I encapsulated them all, I'm going to tell it I want it rounded to 0 decimal places. Okay, so now I have a mark out of 15. Sorry, I don't. I have a mark out of 100 now because I have, I beg your pardon, I've made a slight mistake there. Sorry, what I want to do first, before I round this whole section here, okay, what I want to do is I now have a mark out of 100 because I've weighted each test to 33.33, 33.33 and 33.34, right? So I want to get that mark to a mark out of 50, a mark out of 20, I beg your pardon, I keep talking about a mark out of 15. You need to get it to a mark out of 20. So what we need to do is divide it by 100 and multiply it by 20, okay? And then at that point it gets rounded, okay? So we could even test that. We could even test that component in that I can grab this whole section here, the first section, okay, and I'm going to just cut it out of there, and I'll get rid of that for now, just so that we can test it. We'll go back, and let's say, don't ignore the fact that it says exam mark there. In fact, I'll just get rid of that for now, just because we'll use it as a testing station, for want of a better word. And we'll say, we'll just put the first component in, so you can see it's dealing with just this component. So we should arrive at 15 out of 20, which is exactly what happens. Okay, so we've tested the first component. So let's bung it back into here, as my late father would always say, and we put the other components back in, second component, third component, task if you like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, the second component, actually we can cheat a little bit here, because it's going to follow the same thing as the first one, which again is why I'd like to sort of get a pattern or strategy, if you like, of building these formulas, because you can start to do that. And it's made, for instance, I've been building the term 3 formulas, it's made it go incredibly fast. So I'm going to, as I say, cheat a little bit here and take this whole section here from the first lot, because I know there are 3 components still. Okay, and we know that it is now going to be GHI. Okay, so let's switch out the D's, G's, and E's for H's. And the F's for I's. And we are converting this to a mark out of 10 at the moment. Oh, sorry, I've actually forgotten one aspect of the first section, the first component. We got it to a mark out of 20, then we need to weight it to a mark of 58. Okay, but we don't need to round it again, because again, as I say, the rule is when you move a mark into its weighted component, you don't need to round it. You only need to round it when it needs to display as its task mark. Okay, so we go in this first section again. We want the entire thing, okay, to be, remember it's sitting as a mark out of 20 at the moment, 15 out of 20, so we want to divide it by 20 and multiply it by 58. Okay, and we copied the second section in here. We needn't copy and paste it again, because we see the second component. Oh, this is what alerted me to the idea. So what's cool about the second component is that you've converted it to a mark out of 10, but it's weighted as 10 as well. So there's no need to divide it by 10 and multiply it by 10. It's already in its form that it needs to be in. So again, so it's quite cool that we actually copied and pasted the first component before we put its weighting in, because in the second component we don't need the weighting. Okay, again, as you can see, we've calculated the 3 sections into a mark out of 100, okay, which is its weighted, its total mark for those 3 sections as a weighting, and then divided it by 10 and rounded that off, okay, so that you're now sitting with a mark out of 10. In this case it's 7, and again we can actually test that. What I'll do is I'll just take out these 3 brackets here, and we'll take this whole second component, okay, Control C, and let's pop it in here. So we are now dealing with a second. We should arrive as a mark of 7 out of 10, which we do. Okay, so that's great. As you can see, 7 out of 10. Then the third component, so let's just add our components again, tasks if you like, and okay, that needs to be plus. And again, the third component is just simply a mark out of 5. They will just capture a mark out of 5. And this is an example of what I mentioned in the beginning, when the test total is the same as the task total is the same as the weighting. So it's dead straightforward. You're basically just saying plus plus that column, right? Plus J9 in this case. Okay, that's it. There's no need to convert it into anything. Yeah, there's no need to turn into a mark out of 100 or anything like that, because ultimately they want a mark out of 5. The test is out of 5. They want a weighted mark out of 5. The test out of 5. And then the fourth component is 2 marks out of 50. They are equally weighted, and ultimately can be added together to give you a mark out of 10. So you could just say at least K9 plus L9 divided by the total multiplied by the weighting. Okay. Or we could follow the ritual that we have just for the sake of consistency, which would be the following. So we would put 2 components. Oops, I pushed the button by accident. So we would put 2 components in, 2 activities. Okay, and we would say, oops, I've done something wrong. We would say that divided by that multiplied by that, and we would say that divided by that multiplied by that. What does if you do it this way, what this does do is that if in future let's say you go to mathematics grade 2 and everything is the same except that this test is out of 5 and that's out of 10, even though it's multiplied by 50, you can then just copy and paste the formula across and it'll solve that problem. If we simplified, go the simple route and just say that plus that, and divided by the total, then you wouldn't be able to copy and paste the formula across, or you would be able to copy and paste the formula across, but you'd have to make slight adjustments. So again, it's just, as I say, a sort of safe way of knowing that you're always building the formula correctly. It's just that, say, in the case of J9, I mean, it was patently obvious, and so we just went that route. Anyway, so put your constants in, and we go like so. And there is no need to round at this point because, say 4 out of 5 would be 40 and 5 out of 5 would be 50, and that would make 90, and 90 converted to a mark out of 10 would give you 9. You cannot arrive in this given situation at a decimal. Again, though, to keep for the sake of consistency, you can do the rounding again, just as I say, in case you wanted to copy and paste this formula across to another part that was very similar, but possibly had a different test total. So you would say round the total of those two. You want to divide them by 100 first of all, remember, so that we can get it to a mark out of 10 multiplied by 10, and then round to 0. Okay, and then what we want to do is get that whole component to all of that calculation to divide by 10 and multiply by 13, because you want to take your mark out of 10 here and convert it to a mark out of 13, because that's what that task is weighted. Again, when you turn a mark into its weighting, there is no need to round it. And then the fifth component is a test out of 10 converts to a task out of 10. So what we do in this case is we simply say the mark divided by its total multiplied by 14. Okay, because you've got a mark out of 10, it converts to a task out of 10, so that basically stays the same, and you want to turn it to a mark out of 14. So divided by its total, put your constant in, and this should bring us out at the same mark as SASAMS. Sorry, there was one slight snag here. When I put the round in, I didn't, in this little part over here, I didn't put the round, another bracket in before those two components combined. So yeah, right, so when I run that, I come out at 77.4, which is exactly what they do in SASAMS. So that is your formula with particular reference to Mathematics Phase 1, Grade 3, so Term 3, Grade 3, Term 3. Right. And yeah, so you follow the same principles that we've done in all these tutorial formula tutorial breakdowns. For all of the subjects, you are able to work out or derive the same marks as are arrived at in SASAMS, thus keeping your term marks on your reports consistent with those in SASAMS. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you. Bye.